The trail of the 3rd Army and the 19th Tactical Air Command of the 8th Air Force is marked by more than 40,000 white crosses. 40,000 dead Americans.
We were young and soldiers called to dedicate our lives in the name of God and country. Do what's just, boys. Go do what's right. A hot band of brothers waiting on our chance to add one more page unto the victory dance. Here am I, Lord, send me, send me. Victory lies in the spirit of the lives of the men who died for me.
Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I. Send me."
This is Michael Broderick, Marine Corps veteran, actor, and Gallant Few board member. You are listening to the New American Veteran. Now here's Carl Monger.
Welcome to Gallant Few's The New American Veteran Internet Talk Show. It is my great honor today to bring onto the show U.S. Magistrate Judge, the Honorable Michael Newman from the Southern District of Ohio. Judge Newman, welcome to the New American Veteran.
Thank you, Carl. It's my great honor to be here, and I'm delighted to be on the show with you.
Well, likewise. We have a mutual friend, Laura Orico, and her public relations firm has reached out to me and had several folks come on this show. So I'm delighted to be able to give her a little bit of visibility as we do this as well. So thank you for everything that you're doing, both for your community and for the veteran community. And for the benefit of the audience today, we are going to talk about three main areas. One is we're going to talk about a push that is a national community outreach program where the American Bar, is it Federal Bar Association or medical? The Federal Bar Association, I'm sorry, I fumbled that. The Federal Bar Association is encouraging communities to get involved and learn about the judicial process. With all of the things that have been going on the last year or two, there's a lot of folks out there that don't have maybe the highest impression, or they're just scared of the legal system. So we want to talk about what that is. Then we also want to talk about your involvement with the veteran court system and how you've helped start that there and what you've done. And then we're going to talk about how a veteran that is interested in being an attorney might go through that process. So I guess let's start with the National Community Outreach Project. Judge, tell me about that.
Okay, so great to be here, Carl. And sounds like we have a lot to talk about. So I'll try to get to relay everything to you. But this is something that's my passion, by the way. So I'm the president this year of the Federal Bar Association. It's a group of 19,000 plus lawyers and federal judges throughout the United States, in all 50 states. It's the preeminent bar association for those of us who practice and work in the federal court system. And the history of this is the last couple of years, we've really done this major outreach push to try to focus on ways the Federal Bar Association can help those in the community. Whether they're veterans, our big push is veterans, and it's civics, which I'll talk to you about in just 2 seconds, a major push nationally for civics this year. And then also different aspects of community outreach, helping the poor, helping the homeless, all sorts of those sorts of things. So I'll talk to you about civics, and also I'll talk to you about community outreach. The civics piece came from a meeting I had about 2 years ago with Jim Duff. Jim's a great guy. He's the national director of the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts in Washington. So he's the head administrator of the entire federal court system. And we were chatting, and I happened to be in Washington, and he said, Judge Newman, would the FBA consider doing some kind of civics work? And that sounded very, very appealing to me. I was going to be the national president at that time, about a year and a half out, and I thought, what a wonderful thing to use the Federal Bar Association, the FBA, as a platform to do civics around the country, because so many lawyers love civics and so many federal judges, that's what we do every day. It's the Constitution in action. So we started a program. It's got several components to it. One component is to get judges to meet with young people, whether they're elementary school or middle school or high school, to get them to interact with each other around the country. That has taken off, I will tell you, Carl, like wildfire. I thought it would take off. It's taken off in ways that even I didn't anticipate. We're doing it by inviting young people to come into courtrooms, and we're also doing it by judges, encouraging judges to actually go to schools and meet with young kids. So in Dayton, Ohio, where I sit as a federal judge, I've gone into local elementary schools. I've been down in South Carolina, for example, with the FBA. I've met the judges down there. I've been in a middle school and a high school there. And here in Dayton, we've sent letters to all of the superintendents in the 8 counties that our court serves. Almost all of those superintendents have written back and said, my gosh, are you kidding? Our students meet with a federal judge? Why would we say no? So we're going to have in 2017 over 1,000 kids, between 1,000 and 1,500 kids are going to meet with a federal judge just in Dayton, Ohio, as a direct result of this program, which I think is pretty significant, to be honest.
That's phenomenal. What can you tell me a little bit about what kind of reactions you get from the kids? How do they respond to it?
So they love it. So a couple of things. When I've gone into schools, I bring my robe. I talk about what it means to be a judge. I answer the students' questions. They ask, like, well, how do cases come your way? I explain the difference between civil cases and criminal cases. A number of them want to be involved in the criminal system or the civil justice system as a lawyer someday, and I tell them how you go to law school and all those sorts of things, that your grades are important, your education is important. We talk about all sorts of career things. But in addition to that, many of the young people come to our courthouse, and when they come here, sometimes we do 2 different things. One thing we do is called a court camp, where we have everybody in the court meet the students and tell them what they do for a living. So they'll meet federal judges, they'll meet folks who do bonds, those are called pretrial services people, they'll meet folks from the probation department, we've had the DEA agents, we've had FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, many of whom are veterans, by the way. And they explain to the young people, here's what I do for a living, here's I came to the court system. In the case of the veterans, they'll say, here's my military service, how important that is. And so the young people really come away with a flavor of what you do with your life and what something you could do with your life that's of purpose. Additionally, we also do a program where we actually go through simulations. We'll bring mostly high school students in for this. We'll teach them about a First Amendment case that the Supreme Court's decided that concerns schools and Facebook and social media. And then we'll actually prep the young people, and they'll argue in front of a judge. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's one of my federal judges, and they love it. And they'll argue why young persons should be prosecuted, whether what they said on Facebook is a threat. Other students will say, no, this wasn't a threat. You've got to actually subjectively look, what did this student intend? They didn't intend to threaten anyone. And they're arguing in front of a live federal judges. And a lot of the students, quite frankly, Carl, are really good. They're really good. And I will take them aside and say, you have this talent for this. You should put in the back of your mind that maybe law might be something you want to do when you get older. And they bring teachers with them, of course. And so the teachers will say things like, gosh, Judge Newman, I've been trying to get that message across to these students all year, and here in 5 minutes you were able to communicate that to them. I never had that opportunity when I was younger, by the way, to meet lawyers, to meet judges, to go into a courtroom. I think it's my responsibility as a judge to do this kind of outreach, this kind of community outreach. I think it's significant. If we're having 1,000 to 1,500 kids in Dayton, Ohio do this, and the Federal Bar Association is a national bar, which it is, just imagine how many, probably tens of thousands of kids across the country are going to meet with a federal judge this year as a result.
That's outstanding. That really is a cool program. And when you said the impact of the word, when you pull a young person aside like that, it's kind of like when you're a parent, you have a kid, they don't want to listen to you as a parent sometimes. But if somebody from the outside steps in and says, hey, you're really good at this, then that's that extra motivation that really pumps them up. So doing that, what you're doing, that is going to set the stage for some of those kids to be phenomenal in the future. So well done.
I hope so. Judges joke sometimes, they call it the power of the black robe. And I think sometimes, when you're wearing the robe and you're in the role of judge, people do have a tendency to listen to you, as they should. But I think it's more that you're an authority figure and you're talking to a young person and you're valuing them as a person. And I think the young people sense that, and they sense that no one's making the judges do this. No one's forcing the judges to go into schools. No one's forcing the judges to take the time to to meet with the young people here. It's all voluntary because we care about the kids and we care about the community. And I think all of the judges, at least in where I sit in Ohio, realize that the civics that we learned when we were young, is no disrespect, I just don't think it's talked about or focused so much anymore. And so what we've taken upon ourselves to do in the FBA, and this is a national program, is to explain about the federal court system, how it's different from the state court system, how judges get selected, how we decide cases, how grand juries work and petit juries work, how trials work, how mediations function. We do a lot of case resolutions through mediation. What's a mediation? How do you become a mediator? All those things that I doubt people learn in middle school and high school anymore, but we're trying nationally to get the word out that that's so important.
Now, in the press release, it said, or the way that I read it, not only youth, but also communities. So is there part of this program where maybe an adult, a young adult or an older adult can come participate somehow to tour a courtroom or to get involved with this?
Absolutely, and in multiple ways. The answer is yes, and many times over. So a couple of things. Every May 1st is called Law Day, and May is the month of May is called Law Month, and the Administrative Office of the Courts is celebrating that as open doors to the federal courts, both Law Day and Law Month. And the Federal Bar Association is teaming with what we call the AO, the Administrative Office, to promote this around the country to encourage people to come to federal courthouses, regardless of your age, and whether young or old, community groups, all sorts of people around the country to come and see what a federal courthouse is like. We're offering courthouse tours around the country. We're encouraging people to come and watch hearings and trials. We're really doing, I think we're doing a lot of significant outreach to try to let people know that these courthouses, they're not owned by the judges, they're owned by the taxpayers, they're owned by the citizens, they're your courthouse. And to try to make it transparent, we're trying to make the whole process very transparent. In addition to that, every April, the FBA has what's called the National Community Outreach Project. The abbreviations are NCOP, and this is all sorts of community-based work that we're doing around the country. A lot of it is civics-based, like we've been talking about today, but a lot of it's more than that. It's lawyers, in some cases, going into communities and serving the homeless. It's all sorts of things, just trying to get lawyers and judges into the community in the hope that the community and the legal community can talk to each other, interact with each other, and we're trying to foster that. And I think we're doing a significant job, and I think it's important.
Judge, what do you think is the biggest obstacle that you have to overcome now in terms of what a person might have as a perception of the judicial system? So when you hope to bring more people into it, you want to increase their understanding and their comfort with the system. What are you seeing on the other side of that? What are they scared of or worried about, or what are their misperceptions?
Boy, Carl, that's a really great question. Well, two things seems to be a theme, and I'm seeing this a lot. One, the young people want to make sure you don't have a bias. In almost every school I've been to, and I've been to them all over the country, they've said to me, well, how are judges fair? And my response is, well, I took a constitutional oath to be fair. I take it very, very seriously. And there are ethical canons, and I explained to them that judges can't be involved in any case in which they have a bias or they have an economic interest. And I explained to them there's a whole procedure for it's called recusing yourself from a case, so that if you have a case that you couldn't be fair in, where you know a party, or you have a financial interest, or even has the appearance of those sorts of things, you have to recuse yourself. So some of the students asked me that they didn't understand that possibility exists. They thought, seems to me, their thinking is, once a judge has a case, you always have the case, and what do you do if there's a bias or a conflict? And I say, well, you recuse. The other thing, so I explain that. The other thing the students want to know about is just in general, like how the system works. I don't think they understand that there's a state court system and a federal court system. How cases come to federal court, they're very confused about that, and I understand why. So we talk about federalism, we talk about diversity jurisdiction, parties from two different states, and more than $75,000 at issue, and federal statutes, and that's how cases come to federal court. We do a lot of talking about that, and I think they leave with a better understanding of how cases come here. But I think with many of the students, they say, well, I don't understand. Isn't there a county court system? And you're the federal court, so where would I go file my case, or where would I go to serve as a juror? So we explain those sorts of things.
Before we move on to talk about veteran court, anything else that you'd like to talk about with the community service?
Sure. I'll just tell you very briefly. The Federal Bar Association has set up a very simple website that I think all your listeners and viewers would like to see. It's very easy to navigate. It's fedbar.org, so fedbar.org/civics, fedbar.org/civics. And if you go there, all the materials that we put together, they've been loaned to the FBA by the Administrative Office of the Courts. For judges to interact with young people, quite frankly. And we've set it up by, if a judge has as little as 15 minutes or as long as 3 hours or more, all the materials for the judges are there. But a lot of the materials are really for the public as well. I was in Charleston, South Carolina, as I mentioned a minute ago, and I went into an AP government class. This is a couple weeks ago. And the teacher said, Judge Newman, guess what materials I'm using to work with our students? And I said, gosh, I don't know, a textbook? And she said, well, yes. But in addition to that, I went on the FBA's website, and there are all these great materials, and I just printed them off as handouts, and I'm giving them to the kids. So we spent better part of a year, quite frankly, Carl, working on these materials. They existed. The AO had already written them, and we took them and we organized them in a way that teachers could use them, judges could use them, and because some of the programs are as little as 15 minutes, I thought personally, what a great hook. What judge doesn't have 15 minutes to meet with young people? So we've tried to make it easy for the teachers, easy for the judges, and so fedbar.org/civics, and I think your viewers would like to go to the website. It's very easy to navigate.
Perfect. I'll make sure and include that in the notes on the show as well.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you.
Tell me about the veteran court system and your involvement with that.
Okay, so this is my passion. In addition to civics, two passions in life. Of course, being a judge and being fair is a passion as well, obviously. But the story is there's a really, really good person who probably should be on your show some point. Paul Warner, he's a federal judge in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'd be happy to put you in touch with Judge Warner.
Great.
And he started the first federal veterans court in the United States within the past 3 to 4 years. There are many, in fact, in the state system, but in the federal court system, there are not many veterans courts. And so Judge Warner, who's a friend of mine, he's a military veteran himself. He was in a VA hospital, if I have the story correct, with his dad for treatment of whatever his dad's condition is. And he's reading, I think, the American Legion magazine, and the idea stumbled on him, and he said, my gosh, why aren't we helping all these veterans? And so he started this effort. There's now maybe 10, maybe fewer federal veterans courts in the country. I started the first one here in my court. It's called the Southern District of Ohio. I think it's the first one in the entire state of Ohio, quite frankly. And let me just tell you how it works, and I'll tell you what I think the great advantages of it are. We have a number of veterans, many veterans at the VA hospital charged with misdemeanor crimes. And they come and they're prosecuted by an assistant U.S. attorney. Their crimes are very serious. Carrying a bottle of liquor, for example, a flask of liquor onto the VA property, the charge can be 6 months in incarceration. It's significant. It's serious. And it just seemed to me that many of these veterans, I was beginning to see the same veterans over and over again. They come to federal court because the VA is a federal property, of course. And once I started seeing the same people charged with identical crimes, I thought there is a deeper issue here that really we should be figuring out how do we fix this? And I started thinking that many of these veterans have PTSD and they're self-medicating, quite frankly. And so using Judge Warner's model as an example and using Judge Warner himself as guidance, we set about creating a veterans court here, and it's a treatment court. So you're charged with a crime. It's a misdemeanor. You're charged with a misdemeanor at the local VA hospital here in Dayton, Ohio. You come before me. I explain the criminal process to you. I get you typically a public defender as a lawyer. You certainly have the right to go through that criminal process, but then I also explain there's this other system, which is this treatment system, the veterans court. It's optional, and you can participate in or leave it at any time. And we do it, and basically 80 to 90% of the people charged with crimes say, "My gosh, can I please be in the veterans court?" And the rules we have are you have to come 6 different times. We do it once a month, so you have to come 6 months in a row, and then we work with you to have you get treatment services at the VA. And so the veterans hospitals around the country have appointed what are called VJOs, Veteran Justice Outreach Coordinators. And many of the VA hospitals have more than one. I think here in Dayton we have 2. And their whole job is to find veterans who've kind of slipped through the cracks and put them at the top of the list, if you will, and get them the treatment they need. And it seems to me many of the veterans need psychological treatment. They need medical treatment, of course. Many of the veterans are homeless, so they need assistance along those lines. And they certainly need substance abuse treatment, and it's significant. And I've dealt with all sorts of issues. I've had one veteran who had an opioid addiction, and he had a service dog. And so in Veterans Treatment Court, we were able to help him. He didn't want to be taken away from his dog. And so we worked on that issue. How do we get you to treatment for this very, very serious opioid addiction? And also at the same time, deal with the concerns of your dog. I've had many, many veterans who've cried before me and said, and we're talking guys in their 50s and 60s, and said, Judge Newman, I think you're the first person in 20 years that cared about me as a person. And I tell all the veterans, I'm grateful for your service to our country. Your service is important. You as a person are important. You have worth as a person. I care about you as one human being to another. And there's many, many times, the veterans will say to me, I've had this drug problem for 20 years. I came back from Vietnam, or, the first Operation Desert Storm. And I have tried the treatment. It just hasn't really stuck. But I think I'm ready to go into treatment. And then I talk to them. We do this in an open court setting in front of the other veterans. And I think that camaraderie of one veteran in front of the other veterans is a very successful means of helping them.
It's huge.
And when you complete the program, you get a military challenge coin. Again, an idea that we took from Judge Warner with his blessing, and it says Southern District of Ohio Veterans Court, United States Veterans Court on it, and you get that as your commendation when you complete the program. I've had veterans stand up in front of the other veterans and say, this program has given me self-worth. This program has gotten me off of alcohol. It's gotten me off of drugs. I feel like my life has a purpose now. And sometimes I think I'm not doing all the work. The veterans are doing all the work. But as a federal judge, to have that opportunity to help people, to help veterans, it's very, very significant. I'm just, quite frankly, there are times I pinch myself how lucky I am, how fortunate I am to be able to help the veterans community. I think that's very, very significant. But I'll tell you, we have had amazing success, and I'm very serious with this. I've seen folks that I thought, oh my gosh, how in the world are we going to help this veteran the way they need to be helped? And son of a gun, if 6 months later, I'm looking at a different person. And I think so much of this is getting the right kind of treatment. But I also think part of this is self-esteem, quite frankly. And I think
self-esteem is huge, Judge, because there's a couple of things at play here. And one is when a veteran can tell pretty quick whether or not you're being real with them. And when you truly care and you offer solutions and you offer resources to help with those solutions, that's what they get when they're in the military. They get resources to resolve problems that they run up against, whether it's an enemy soldier, a training situation, or whatever they have to do in the barracks. But the VA system so often will identify an issue, but then not really provide the resources that they need to overcome that issue, aside from just drugging them silly. And that doesn't work. And when you look at the most recent study the VA has done of veteran suicides, they say on average 20 veterans take their own lives every day, but half of them are over the age of 50. And I am convinced that the reason for that is once you go 20 or 30 years with low self-esteem, with substance abuse, you've burned through any jobs, any financial resources you had, you've probably destroyed relationships through all of that. At some point you go, I don't have a purpose, I don't have meaning, and they end their own life. And it doesn't need to happen that way. If we can give them the resources early on, we can avert that.
So I'll tell you a couple of things, Carl. I have expanded this program. When I started, I thought it was just folks who needed medical care and substance abuse treatment at the VA, because that's what I'd seen when they were criminally prosecuted. So that's how we started. And then I started saying to the veterans, is there any other way that we can help you? How are you doing? And they started saying things like, well, Judge, actually, I'm homeless. I live at the VA. I'm waiting for a HUD voucher. I don't have a place to live. So we've started working on that effort to try to get people a safe place to live. In addition to that, many of them say, I'm eligible to work. I want a job. I want to have something to get up every day and a reason to get me out of bed and motivate me. And so we've brought Goodwill and Easter Seals in. A very nice guy named Ken Heaton, who works here in Dayton, Ohio with Goodwill and Easter Seals, who brings the veterans, he brings them down to Goodwill. He teaches them how to write a resume. He's got this large database of employers who want to give veterans a job. And he's worked with them, and he's done a fabulous job. And so many of the veterans, when they leave our Veterans Treatment Court, they not only don't have substance abuse issues anymore, either they have a safe place to live, or they're around the corner from getting a safe place to live. They have a job, or they're on the verge of getting a job. And you can see the smile on the veterans' faces. I mean, it's you don't have to be a genius to figure it out. You're helping people in a significant way. The fact that I'm a judge and get to do that and do justice at the same time, very, very important, and it makes me very, very gratified to help the veterans. It's
one of the biggest disservices that the VA does is to proclaim that a veteran is 100% disabled and unemployable, and they pay them a decent living wage. They'll never lack for the rest of their life if they manage their money. They're not rich, but they can afford a home, they can afford a car, they can afford food, they can have cable, they can have some nice things, but they can't get a job. And the VA basically has said, here's some money. We're going to pay you off to just go away and be quiet and don't bother anybody. And that is absolutely, in my opinion, the wrong approach. If somebody's 100% disabled, pay them. Absolutely compensate them for that. But they can answer phones. They can open doors. They can talk to other veterans on the phone. There are ways that they can be involved. We can't tell them that they have no purpose or no use anymore.
Oh, gosh. So I will tell you, Carl, in this court, I see my role as not only helping the veterans, but increasing their self-esteem significantly, but also focusing on the fact that, you're here for a reason. You have a purpose in life. And I cannot tell you how many veterans say, I want a job, I want to work, I want to help other veterans, I want to do something of value. So it's a significant program. I feel very blessed that I have the opportunity to do that. The other thing I was going to tell you that the FBA does to help veterans, well, a couple of things. One significant thing is we're going to do a Wills for Veterans program this coming November in conjunction with Veterans Day. It's going to be a national program. And I saw that the Dayton Bar Association did that here this past Veterans Day. They did it locally, just in Dayton. Came out of a program called Wills for Heroes, which is to help police and firefighters and EMTs make sure they had wills. And then they morphed it into helping the veterans community. And then I thought, well, gosh, why don't we just take that national? And we have so many chapters in all over the country. Why don't we make this a national effort? And so I kind of got the word out there that the FBA was interested in doing this, and now it's a floodgate, quite frankly. People all over the country saying, how do I participate? Our chapter wants to be involved. We want to do it. So a good person named Todd Hitchbeth, who's an Air Force employee, he's down in San Antonio, Texas. Todd's very active in the Federal Bar Association. I've asked him to lead this program, and obviously being in the military himself, he's very committed, and so he's in charge of the program. It's going to happen this coming November. I think it's going to be a great success, and we're going to do wills for veterans all over the country. The other thing,
keep me in the loop when you do that, because I want to make sure and get the word out.
I promise you I will. I promise I'll be back in touch, Carl, with that. And the other thing I will tell you is that we're trying to help veterans who have disability claims. So it was made aware to me, and I kind of knew this, but I didn't really understand the contours of it. I do a lot of Social Security disability cases not for veterans necessarily. As a federal judge, I see 1 and 2 of those appeals a week. But certainly there's a similar series of disability laws that apply to veterans in the VA system. And apparently there's a real need for lawyers to help those folks. So we're training lawyers around the country to do that effort and to help the veterans on a pro bono basis without any charge to them. And a lot of lawyers have come up to the Federal Bar Association and said, this is a need. Can you fill it? We're willing to help. We'll help the veterans pro bono. We don't want to make a dime. We want to do what's right. And if there's disability claims, we want to help them with it. So we're doing that. And that's at the beginning. That's at the infancy of that program. We did a test one in Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago. We brought a gentleman out from, I think it's called the Pro Bono Veterans Consortium. David Myers is his name. He flew out from DC. He came to Cincinnati. We did a 3-hour training seminar. We had about 50 lawyers there. And we're signing them up with the VA to be certified to help the veterans pro bono. And then this program also, we're trying to replicate that around the country so that effort will take on. So you can see I kind of have my plate full. But I think, how many times in life do you get to be, as a federal judge, you also get to be national president of the Federal Bar Association? And I thought, not many. You get one chance in life to do this work. So this is my year to try to get all these things done, helping the veterans community in multiple ways, and trying and helping also the young people with our civics initiative, and then helping the community at large, who I don't think knows very much about the federal courts and what we do, trying to educate them as well.
Well, Judge Newman, on the behalf of veterans all across the country, thank you for what you do. I really appreciate that. And to know that you're making a difference. I know you've got to run into a lot of frustrating situations on sometimes a daily basis, but probably a weekly basis, as I do. And then you get that one person that stands in front of you that says, this made a difference in my life. And that makes everything else. It makes all the trash that comes along with that sometimes go away. Help me with one more thing before we close the interview.
Of course.
How can we get more veterans to be judges or attorneys?
That's a wonderful thing. I think that's a great effort. I would be delighted to work on that myself, because I just think it's important, quite frankly. So I've taught at a number of local law schools here in the Dayton area, at University of Dayton Law School, and down in Cincinnati. I taught at University of Cincinnati and at Chase Law School over many, many years. And whenever I've had a veteran in law school, I motivate them, I encourage them, and I say, please don't lose touch with your background as a veteran. Please, please, please be sure that you help other veterans once you pass the bar exam. I don't know. That's a really good question, Carl. I think when folks leave the military, hopefully they have a sense of how important the law is and how important it is to help other people, and that knowing, I hope, that you can do that as a lawyer. I certainly go around the country speaking to every veteran I can and telling them, that if you have a chance to be a lawyer, that's how you're gonna help people. The veteran community that I see, quite frankly, I see veterans who have all the issues that we've been talking about today. So with those veterans, I'm just trying to get them to the point, quite frankly, where they have a safe place to live, and if they want a job, they have a job, and they're free from substance abuse. But I think veterans who have other concerns, I think it's very, very important that nationally we motivate them to go become lawyers and hopefully become judges. And I think that's something that I should add to my list of things of trying to get accomplished this year. I do get to write these president's messages once a month in our Bar Association magazine. The magazine's called The Federal Lawyer, TFL we call it, but it's called The Federal Lawyer. And I write every month about helping veterans and doing civics. So I will try to add that to my list of things to write about. I should write about the importance of veterans going to law school. I think that's a very important issue.
Well, I have one way that I might be able to help you with that. And I didn't set this up this way. This just popped into my head right now, but you're familiar with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I'm sure that through the legal system, you've been acquainted with that.
I was a big 2 years ago.
Well, thank you very much for that, because I was a little brother and a big brother as well. The way that Gallant Few was initially established, and what we try to do now all the time, is we want to be preventive and proactive, like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, by connecting veterans that are leaving active duty, even before they become veterans, as they're in the process of leaving their home station. When they go to wherever they're going to live, whether they're getting a job, going to school, or trying to figure out what's next in life, we want to connect them with a big brother or big sister, but that is another veteran that's like them, that has gone through transition. They've been through school. They have a job. They are an attorney. They are an accountant. They are a teacher, and they can help if we can connect these veterans so that they are just as similar as possible. Same branch of the service, same military specialty, infantryman to infantryman, tanker to tanker. Then they have an immediate bond and trust that, because I'm an Army guy, I don't have immediately with a Marine. I have to build that trust with a Marine, but another Army person that shares my background, we're instant best friends. There are a lot of attorneys in the Federal Bar Association, and probably the American Bar Association as well, who are veterans themselves. And if we can get them talking to veterans as they come back into their communities, like with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, when you have that example of, you mean I can be a private or a specialist in the Army carrying a rifle, and in 8 years I can be a practicing attorney? How in the world do I do that? Those individuals, those mentors can help them, can help guide them along that path. So maybe that's a discussion that we can continue, how we can spread that.
Very much. And I will tell you, so that kind of mentoring is very, very successful. So here in Ohio, in the legal community, the Ohio Supreme Court started a mentoring program within the past 10 years, and it's grown, I think, to be about 6,000 lawyers who've volunteered to be mentors, and I've been a mentor for many years. And trust me, you get as much as you get, way more than you give. I mean, the rewards are significant, but that absolutely could be replicated in the veteran legal context. So I'll tell you, here in Ohio, the program works by, they do a matching system, and they match a lawyer in your area of expertise and what part of Ohio you live with a young person or a newly minted lawyer coming out of law school. Doesn't necessarily have to be a young person, but someone who's a recent graduate, where they live, what their interests are, very detailed database of matching, and it's very successful. And the FBA certainly could take that on and do that in the veterans context. I think that's a very, very interesting idea, and I'd be happy to pursue it and also talk to me about it. I'd be happy to do that.
Well, Judge Newman, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for being on the New American Veteran. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close the conversation?
Well, it's an honor to be here, Carl, and it's an honor to talk about all the great work that the Federal Bar Association is doing around the country, and it's a thrill, really. It's, as a judge, you're very blessed to do justice every day, but to have a chance like this to give back, both to young people in the context of civics and community service, and to veterans in the sense of helping them with the Veterans Court and these treatment efforts. I'm honored to lead this effort, and it's my pleasure to give back in these different ways.
Well, Judge, thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you very, very much.
That beautiful rendition of Taps is a public domain recording created and recorded by an employee of the United States government. It is open source and not under copyright protection. Kenny Thomas' song Send Me is used by permission of Kenny Thomas. Isaiah 6:8 was read by Tim Abel. Thank you, Michael Broderick, for the introduction. All work is original or used by permission. This has been a production of Gallant Fuse, the New American Veteran, a member of the Heroes Media Group. All rights reserved.